You're back with another one. This time we got the ranking the worst contracts in NBA 2022.
The NBA has a history.
Make sure y'all like the video, comment, subscribe. I gotta remove this from the playlist before I forget. Like the last video I literally just recorded. I already closed it out and then I forgot to remove it from the playlist. So I think it was like 280 something. There we go. 273. And then this one is the last one I've actually, because I saw this last night and I was like, oh, I'm gonna react to that. When would this come out? August 9th. So yesterday. Dang, I'm quick. That's too quick. That's too quick. I'm sorry, but I got to do it. I really thought this was interesting.
Really bad contracts. I'm sure as I say that, some names come to your mind. Nick Batum, Chandler Parsons, Zion Mahinmi. And just because
Joe
they've gotten
Johnson.
better at this over the last couple of seasons in the NBA doesn't mean that there aren't still some truly awful contracts.
Oh no, Rudy Gobert
I'm going to count down
has a terrible contract.
Contracts in the entire
and
league.
it sucks.
Quickly, some honorable
It
mentions
really
that you
sucks
might
because
expect
it's
to
like,
be on the list. First up would be
dang.
Damian Lillard. Obviously, Dame is an incredible
yeah.
player. When you're looking at paying this guy $61 million, when he
The only difference is that some of these people, like situations, they kind of had to do it. With Rudy, they paid him and then traded him like 1 to 2 years later. I don't know the exact number, but it was just like, dang, bro, like they was not really, they didn't really want to, but they knew they kind of had to keep him, or else he was gonna just walk. And then they got a buttload of like picks and players from the Timberwolves. Still mad at that. For Rudy Gobert, so and Patrick Beverly are heart of the team.
he's way over 30 years old, that can very easily be seen as a bad contract. And in a similar way, Jimmy Butler is also here as an honorable mention, making $52 million in the 25-26 season. Again, those guys are still going to be good at that point, but they're not going to be, I wouldn't guess, all NBA level players when they're 35 years old. And so
I don't see why they wouldn't be.
Absolutely massive for those guys at that point in their careers. Now, the counter to that would be the salary cap is going to go up pretty significantly here over the next couple of seasons as a new TV rights deal comes in. So there are certainly going to be players making more than this on new contracts at that point. But given their age and possible injuries, those are some big numbers. But they're incredible
I
players.
definitely don't see that Jimmy Butler one because he's definitely taken them to 2 conference finals, like in a row. One NBA finals already. Did they go to conference final last year? I don't know this year they did, but the year before did they go to the conference final? I actually don't think they did. I think they got eliminated in the first round. Yeah, by Giannis. Yeah. Never mind. But he brought them to a conference final and then an NBA finals. Other order. NBA finals and conference finals. So that Jimmy one, okay. The Dame one, I mean, that's just loyalty. Honestly, that's just loyalty. They had to do it.
Me to put them in the top 10 of awful contracts. And then one other honorable mention here, De'Aaron Fox. I didn't put him in the top 10 because he had a strong finish last year, playing alongside Domantas Sabonis. But there's a possibility that he becomes like the Andrew Wiggins of rookie contract extensions if he can't continue to improve and try and win some basketball games there in Sacramento, given how big of a contract this is. But now let's get into the real top 10, and certainly a player that is not a star in comparison to those three guys we just talked about in the honorable mentions.
I don't think Wiggins will see that kind of money.
Signed a 5-year, I think $90 million or $80 million extension
That's not
a couple
bad.
years ago after a really great season in Washington. That was the season going into the bubble where he decided not to go to the bubble because he knew that he was going to be an upcoming free agent and wanted to get a big contract. Full credit to him. But unfortunately, after that contract year, he just hasn't been the same level of player. I mean, he was an incredible three-point shooter in that season. Crazy volume, difficult shots.
That's not bad, honestly. I'd take that.
And obviously, he is not an impactful defensive player either, or a great rebounder. And so when you're
that's tradable,
and you're not shooting the ball well, and you're making $16, $17 million a year, that is obviously going to be an issue. He's not the only player on this list that is a role player that got paid a ton of money to be a high-quality specialist.
Is it the dude on the Heat, Duncan Robinson?
Contracts, but he is going to end up here at number 10 just simply because of the value that he provides compared to how much he's getting paid. But now we're getting into some bigger names here.
That's easily tradable.
Tobias Harris, who actually only has 2 years left on his contract, and it is technically a max contract.
Yeah, now Tobias Harris.
This is something that we have to be careful about.
That's a bad one.
On big contracts. Tobias Harris is not a bad player. He's improved defensively. Yeah. He's improved as a playmaker. He's a pretty decent shot creator and shot maker, but he's not an all-star level player. He's not a guy that's going to, This one is much more understandable. Tobias Harris is getting paid like an all-star superstar. He's not playing like one. He's playing like Davis Bertans right now. Like that's the type of money he should be making. $80 million, how he's playing versus how much he's getting paid. That's much different. Points per game every single night. He's very inconsistent. And in Philadelphia, he's been put in a situation situation that is not really super conducive to his skill sets. When he came to Philadelphia, he was a pretty good pick and roll operator in LA with the Clippers. They traded for him, and now he's been really an off-ball guy. And if you really want to utilize Tobias Harris to the maximum of his potential, he's going to have the basketball in his hands a little bit more often than he does in Philadelphia. But there's just so many other guys on this Philly roster that are better at that than Tobias Harris that he gets marginalized a bit. And 37 and 39, million dollars to be a marginalized, basically role player, not ideal if you're Tobias Harris in the Philadelphia 76ers. So certainly one of the worst contracts in the league, but it gets much, much worse.
They need to flip Tobias Harris for role players, 2 other role players. That would be perfect just for Tobias Harris.
From here, trust me. Number 8 now, I put Malcolm Brogdon, and I don't think that many people would put him on this list when they're coming up with this list, but when you look at what he's getting paid, 22, 21, and 23, and then you look at the amount of games he's actually played over the last 3 seasons. Granted, some of these seasons have been weird, they've been condensed, there's been less games, whatever the case may be, but I'm going to want more games played than this out of my $20 million a year guy if I'm formerly the Indiana Pacers, now currently the Boston Celtics. That's why Boston was able to get this guy for basically a first-round pick in Aaron Nesmith. Like, they didn't trade a ton in exchange for Malcolm Brogdon. That's because he's been very available after that first season in Indiana. He had a really awful injury record coming into college where his medicals in the draft period were truly awful. That's why he went in the second round. And
he's a steal, honestly.
The last couple years in the NBA, and you can talk about players that aren't playing particularly well with big numbers, but when you're not even on the floor, when you're just eating up $20 million of your team's salary cap to miss half the season every year, that's really tough. And ultimately, that's why Malcolm Brogdon falls at number 8 here.
I'm excited for the Celtics this year.
Is one that everybody
Brogdon gonna help so much,
and that is Gordon Hayward of the Charlotte Hornets, making 30 this year, 31 the following, and this was a Hornets tax essentially when they signed Gordon Hayward up.
Now, Gordon Hayward has been overpaid since he left the Jazz. Every time he's barely available. He keeps getting hurt. Yes, he's a good player, but he's just so injury prone at this point. Like, his next contract, I swear, if they give him more than $80 million, then they foolish.
They knew they weren't going to be able to get him or any other
$80 million for 5
without paying a significant tax on top of what they should be paid. And that's why Gordon Hayward ended up with $30 million a year. Now, to be fair, Gordon Hayward, when healthy, has been good for Charlotte. Like, their record
maybe $50 million, honestly.
Gordon Hayward healthy and playing,
that was being nice.
Good compared to when he's not playing. But again, it's just like the Malcolm Brogdon thing. If you're going to make 30 plus, I need you to be more than a part-time player. And unfortunately, the last couple of seasons, Gordon Hayward, whether it be just because of being unlucky or some continuous injury stuff, has just not been on the floor enough. And I like Gordon Hayward. I really do. And I think that it actually was a pretty decent gamble on Charlotte's part to pay him this much. And if he's healthy this year or next year, he certainly could be worth $30 million in a season because of the way that he can connect your team as a playmaker, brings good size as well, can shoot the ball. But for me, it all comes down to health, and that is why he is number 7 on this list. Number 6 now is a player I knew you guys were going to know was going to be on the list, but maybe not where they actually ended up. Number 6 is Russell Westbrook. And really the only reason he's here is just because it's an expiring. Like, he would be higher on this list given the value he provides to your team, given the fit, given the issues he's had in LA.
This is last year, so I mean, it is.
$47 million. This is by far the highest paid player that we've looked at so far, but an expiring contract is just much less.
Yeah, that's with a Thunder.
Much less difficult to deal with, and Russell Westbrook is still a good player. Like, I'm not going to act like he's a role player. He's still very good. He can still start in this league and create a lot of things for you.
It's not for that team,
but that
honestly.
47 number is a huge.
Westbrook needs to go to a team that needs a point guard like that. Like the Celtics with Westbrook would be deadly. That would be a good good team for Westbrook. Not like, honestly, yeah, the Celtics, they got a lot of driving kickers. They got a lot of, Celtics is a very good team for Westbrook, honestly.
Huge issue, and a big thing with contracts and being a bad contract is how easy is it to trade you, and it's very clear right now that the market for Russell Westbrook is basically 0, and so that's why he's number 6 on this list.
Westbrook can attack the basket. So he can attack the basket, get in like enough to where they need to actually focus on him in the paint. And then there's a lot of shooters in Boston. There's a lot that'll give Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum some more openness. Robert Williams can hit the 3, so they gotta at least guard him on the perimeter. I don't know. I haven't seen Grant Williams like how he plays, but there's Marcus Smart. He can hit a 3. He'll lock up. He'll be good playing next to Westbrook. You could put Jaylen Brown at the 3, and then and Jason Tatum at the 4, Al Horford at the 5, That'd be nice. That'd be a nice lineup. I'm gonna put that into 2K. I'm gonna see how that goes. I'm gonna play in my league year at that.
A shooting specialist that is just not playing particularly well at the moment. And it's Duncan Robinson, who earned the highest contract ever, the biggest contract ever, I should say, for an undrafted player in NBA history when he signed with the Miami Heat last offseason. And something happened there. And he's talked publicly in the past about this. He's talked about, like, imposter syndrome and not knowing if he belongs in the NBA and how to deal with that mentally. And given some of those comments that he's made, I'd have to believe that this is a mental thing for Duncan Robinson. Like, he, through his first couple of seasons in the league, was an incredible shooter. And last year, he wasn't bad. Like, 37% on his kind of volume and difficulty is not bad, but it's not good enough to be getting paid $17 million a year for the next couple of seasons when you're not a factor defensively, when you don't rebound, when you don't play make, when the only thing that you're out there to do is space and you're shooting 37%. It's going to be a bad contract. Not just the fact that it's a big number, but it's for the next couple of seasons as well. That extra year is why he is higher up on this list than Davis Bertans, who we talked about earlier. But I think there's still...
He's spitting facts. Hold up. Let me... What else you got? What else you got on here? What else you got on here? That's enough for me. That's enough for me. You consistent? Yep, that's enough for me. That is enough for me. Got a sub.
Whether it's with Miami or elsewhere, he becomes worth this contract at some point down the road as a floor spacer. And maybe this was just a weird season for him, where mentally it was hard for him to get over the fact that he's now, like, he went from undrafted, barely making anything guy to the pressure of making $17+ million a year. Maybe he can figure that out this upcoming season and return to being one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And if he does, he won't find himself on this list next year, but right now, he's number 5. Number 4 now is Kristaps Porzingis. Spoiler alert, the first of 2 Washington Wizards in the top 4 of this list. Making 33 this year, 36.
I'm assuming since the thumbnail was what it was. Since the thumbnail is like this, Rudy Gobert, like someone in the Nuggets, Kristaps, the Heat. So I'm guessing that's Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson right there. I can't put on it because it's gonna put his face on it. Duncan Robinson, Kristaps, and then I'm not saying Jamal Murray. Probably Michael Porter Jr. because he doesn't ever play, and they gave him his extension. Rudy Gobert, and then Bradley Beal is what I'm assuming, since they just gave him a contract extension, but they're not really winning with it.
And they gave him bank.
51 games this past year, 43 the year before, 57 the year before that, and an ACL injury prior to, all of which have led to Kristaps Porzingis being an incredibly inconsistent player, not just in his play, but also in his ability to actually stay on the floor. Now, there's only 2 years left on the contract, so it's not as egregious now as it used to be, but certainly, given the number, given the production, and given the health of Kristaps Porzingis, he had to be at least top 5 on this list.
He played like a
Injuries,
baby.
number 3 is Michael Porter Jr. I really considered putting him second, but I'm going to give him a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt now that I have in the past. And given the fact that he is still so young, there's a real possibility that he ends up becoming an all-star caliber player and a really, really good player for Denver. But he played 9 games this past season. He's had back issues the entirety of the time that he's been in the league. Missed his entire first season as a result of back issues that went all the way back to high school for him. That, to me, is a massive concern. Like, think about the process.
How many games has he played? Porter Jr. I know I spelled Michael wrong. I'm just trying to type it in. Basketball reference. Oh, okay, so he did play. This is his 4th season going in. Wow, I didn't even realize that. Man, time is flying. Did not play his first season. So 55 games. Game started 61 games, and that was bubble year, right? 2020 was bubble. 2021, he did not. He did 61. So he's played 61 games as most. That's pretty good, honestly. For a rookie, though, I mean, let's see how Zion is compared. Zion could be on here, too, because Zion hasn't played in about 2 years. And he got his extension, too. 24 games first season. Then he played because of injury. 61 games. Zion could be on here too. Honestly, Zion is just as... Because what is his contract looking like? Contract. 230... Yeah, no. Zion could easily be on here too. Because he...
Trying to be a professional basketball player, the athleticism athleticism that necessitates.
He's honestly played less than Michael Porter Jr. It's just the fact that 9 games sticks out, and then he got his extension. But Zion didn't play last year at all.
Multiple back procedures, I should say, and then trying to get back.
And then
to
yeah,
that
he
level
was
of
hurt
athleticism
before
with
the
the added
draft,
pressure,
unlike
making
Zion.
$30+ million a year. That to me is not a recipe for a successful NBA career. So he has to be in this top 3. I think these 3 guys at the very top are very clearly the 3 worst, and it just depends on how exactly you want to order them. I went with Porter Jr. third just because he is still young, he still has plenty of potential, but if you want to put him second, I think that's debatable. I think number 1, though, by the way, is not even close. It's not a debate at all. But number 2 now, the guy that I kind of went back and forth on being either 2 or 3, is Rudy Gobert. Now, the reason Gobert wouldn't be...
Before it gets too deep, I don't even think like Michael Porter Jr. is that bad of a pay, because you saw when he plays, he balls out. He balls out. But like same with Zion. So that's why like I'm pretty sure Zion's not on this. But Michael Porter Jr. he balls out when he plays. So like I'm not really that mad at it, if he wouldn't been on this.
Second would be because he's a really good player. Like, you can think whatever you want to about Rudy Gobert and his ability to stay on the floor defensively or offensively, but he is one of, if not the best defensive bigs of the last 10 years in terms of rim protection in the NBA. And there's a lot of value to that. He's improved a bit as an offensive player, certainly as a lob threat, and in terms of finishing at the rim and things like that. But when you're making 38, 41, 43, and 46 on a player option that he's going to pick up in the 25-26 season, and you are rapidly approaching 30 years old, that to me is a huge cause for concern. Not just in terms of his age, but in terms of the fact that his play has been slipping a little bit when you look at some of the advanced numbers in terms of rim protection, in terms of rebounding, and offensively, we've talked about this before, he's not going to be a threat in the postseason, and it's going to be difficult for him to, at times, in certain matchups, stay on the floor late in big playoff games, and that is a huge issue for a guy that's making $40+ million a year. Maybe
He keeps saying that like 30 years old like is a thing. 30 years old is really nothing now in the NBA. People play so much longer now in the NBA than they used to. So we really gotta like update that. So like being like 38 is probably something to be concerned at. 30 is nothing. Chris Paul is damn near 40. Pretty sure he's like 38. Chris Paul, and then you see how well he plays. Especially Chris Paul's 37. Pretty sure LeBron is 37 also. LeBron James. 37, yep, and he's still playing at a high level. All these, like, Carmelo, he's not playing at a high level anymore, but, like, he still could play. He's still, like, 38, like, we need to get to, like, 38, that's when it's like, all right, you shouldn't get that kind of contract. Last one. Mike Conley. 34. Mike Conley making 26 million a year. 2016. Okay, what's his contract looking like now? I don't even know what team he's on. Is he still on the Jazz? Still on the Jazz. Okay. 3 years, 68 million. He's a free agent in 2 years. Okay, yeah. Mike Conley. See, that's still a good, because Mike Conley can produce. He can produce. That was not what I needed. Basketball Reference is what I wanted. Basketball Reference, come on. Go back. Mike Conley last year. Games, he played 72 games. That's a lot. Let's see. Okay, he didn't shoot that much, honestly. Ooh. But I think that's more because Donovan Mitchell is the primary ball handler. Where's points per game? 13 points per game. Yeah, that's not that good, actually. That's not that good for making that kind of money. Come on, Michael. Michael Conley. 3-point percentage, 40%. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. 40%. Okay. Mike Conley isn't playing, like, I mean, if he attempted, because he didn't even attempt that many. He took 11 a game. That's not that much. If he took more shots a game, I'm pretty sure it would be good. Let's see. Donovan Mitchell. Let's see. Boom. Attempts, field goal attempts, 20 a game. Donovan Mitchell is a ball handler. Like, he takes all the shots. He took 20 a game. Double Mike Conley's. nearly double Mike Conley. So yeah,
Those issues will be mitigated a bit here in Minnesota.
the whole age thing, we got to up it from 30 to like 35, 36, 37. Because
Minnesota is hoping that those issues are fixed playing alongside Karl Anthony Towns. And it might be confusing to have him at number 2 when I talked earlier about trade value being a big deal in terms of how easy is it to trade you has a lot to do with what your value is. And Rudy Gobert just got traded for basically 6 first-round picks. But
it's not just him; it's all media, all basketball media.
Any other team in the league was going to be willing to make that deal, and so it almost doesn't count in my opinion. So Rudy Gobert is going to go second. But number 1, by far, in my opinion, the worst contract in the league is Bradley Beal, the Washington Wizards. And
Called
it's
it.
not just that he's
Called
getting
it.
older. It's not just the number. It's not just the
I don't even know how
fact
old
that
Bradley
they have
Beal
win
is.
basketball games with him.
I don't think he's in his 30s.
Unfathomable no trade clause. The only player in the entire league that has a no trade clause. Bradley Beal is the 5th highest paid player in the league this upcoming season.
I forgot about that.
He has a 5-year contract with a player option with a 25% trade kicker and a no trade clause. There is absolutely no excuse, no reason for Washington to have given him the no trade clause. What that allows him to do is ultimately, if he decides that he wants to leave and he does want to be traded, he has veto power over any trade that you bring to him. So if you say, hey, we have 3 different options, one to Miami, one to, let's just say, Philadelphia, and one to,
I mean, I agree with this one because they're not winning.
And the New Orleans,
there was no reason for them to do this.
Picks and interesting young players and a really good trade package for Washington, while Miami and Philly are giving up 70% of the value that New Orleans is. If Bradley Beal doesn't want to go to New Orleans, he just says, hey, no, I don't want to do that one. No trade clause. I just want to go to Miami and Philly. And typically, those teams are not going to have as much value to bring back in exchange as a team potentially like New Orleans that Bradley Beal might not want to go to. And that no trade clause makes his decision final on whether or not he wants to be traded. And that is egregious mismanagement on the part of the Washington Wizards for a player that I'm confident within the next 2 seasons is going to request a trade. And that's without even getting into the fact that he's going to be making $57 million in the 26-27 season as he gets well over 30 years old and is not currently, right now, I think, a top 25 or a top 30 player in the league. Very, very easy to make that argument that he's not a top 30 player, and he's the only guy in the league with
I gotta see, because he said in his 30s, so I gotta see. Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is, where's his age? I just went right over it, didn't I? 29. He's 29. Okay. So at the end of his contract, I mean, that's not bad. He'll be 30, 34, 35. That's not bad.
No trade clause. He's the 5th highest paid player in the league this season on a new contract that pays him $57 million 5 years from now when he's 34 years old. There is no worse contract in the league than Bradley Beal. So yeah, that's my top 10. Let me know down in the comment section below what your top 10 worst contracts would be.
Oh.
2022.
That's not what I wanted to click on. Get out of here, Sage.
The NBA has a
that was a good video though. Bradley Beal, yeah, I agree. That's probably the worst contract, especially if they put the no trade clause. Sad about Gordon Hayward. True. I'm surprised not to see Clay on here. What? Clay producing. Clay's producing. Like what? Clay's producing. I'd have said Wiggins before Clay. Even then, like that's a trip. That's a reach. Make quote about Brogdon. I mean, yeah, Brogdon injury makes sense. You could AD on the list as well, being a match contract, being able only fraction. Yo, Anthony Davis is freaking hilarious. Saying that, like I heard that, and that was freaking hilarious. And Street Clothes, that was also hilarious. There's one more that was hilarious, but it wasn't even. Oh, it was Embiid. It was Web Embiid. That was also hilarious. But I'm gonna get out of here. Make sure y'all like the video, comment, subscribe. Let me know who else could have been on this list. 'Cause I think Zion could have been on this list, easy. If you put whatchamacallit, if you put Michael Porter Jr. on here, Zion could be on there. So yeah, let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Bye.